that definitely going to with this card, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have another question, sorry. I'll follow up on that. Was it fascinating when, I'm guessing you did do a bit of research to be able to find those connections. Did you find it fascinating? Was it heartbreaking to see how everything is so parallel and similar for Africans in Africa and Africans across the world? How was that experience learning about
No,
that?
I mean, part of it, and this is something, I'm 51, sorry, I'm 50. Anyway, yeah, give or take, right? So, but part of it has been. Yeah. That's my publisher. Yeah. So, but part of it has been, just learning how little I know, right? Like I mentioned, the Malcolm X. I mean, I grew up here, and it's not something I knew. Like something you have to search for and stuff like that. So for me, I would say it's just the realization that this history that has already happened, that we are just not aware of. Yeah, and the need, and I think, and the need for us to, we can't continue as we are, right? We just can't, right? So, and the need for us then to go back to this history and learn from it, or just read it and learn from it. Okay, so when I was writing my book, my other book, oh yeah, so I'm glad you asked. Yeah. The Rise of the African Novel, right? Which is like a study of why we write in English and so on and so forth, right? Yeah, after two things. One was the realization that the education system that we inherited from the British was the same. It was the same educational policy that was used on Native Americans and also used on African Americans, right? So if you have the pull yourself up by the bootstraps, the whole idea of polytechnics, like the whole idea of what should be education should be, yeah. So, but when you look at all this, though, you come back to one foundation, called the Phelps-Stokes Foundation, that then was creating these policies, right? So I don't know. Yeah. So part of my life now is just being shocked, actually. Constantly. Constantly. Yeah. Yeah. Constantly. Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like an African person. And then always say they're shocked.
I'm shocked and perturbed.
Sorry, I have a question about your role as also a professor of English literature, but also as a writer of novels. And I was just curious to hear your thoughts about the place of the university as a place where to teach African literature, not only in the US but also in Kenya, right? Because we've seen a lot of attacks on different departments at the University of Nairobi and all that. And I was just wondering, and I'm happy for all these other spaces that exist outside the academy for conversations like this. But I'm just
she just like a culture. All right, so I can tell you about this thread, right? So you guys know, the whole thing with Goge, Tabano, Lyon, and changing the English department's name here from English department to just Department of Literature. And then now the reversal that has just happened, where now it will be part of the linguistics. I don't know, something about the IMF and So and that's a movement that inspired, in a way, actually, in a very serious way, post-colonial studies and the whole revaluation of English departments. To answer your question practically, last year, because of COVID, we were in lockdown, we had time. We were like, I think we need to change our department's name. So our department was English department. This is at Cornell. Was a Department of English, and now it's Department of Literature in English, right? To just try to reflect of what, and part of it was very practical. When we looked around, we were like, I'm teaching African literature. You have people teaching, I don't know, all the Caribbean literature, Latin American literature, like within this department. Like why we still calling it English department, right? If you're in academia, you start from where you are, right? You decolonize from where you are, right? So in our case, we're in the English department. We're like, we need to decolonize. But part of it also is, how do you move beyond the symbolic to the practical, right? So yeah, then we have to look at the whole curriculum, how we are teaching it, and part of it was and also how also are we teaching even within individual fields. Let's say the Enlightenment, right? You can teach Enlightenment as a white, sublime, liberation, or French Revolution, blah 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 blah, right? But you can also take the Enlightenment period and read it as a contradiction around issues of race, gender, and so on and so forth. So there's a question of within the field, what do you do with it? And then also the practicalities of what courses are the students taking, and so on and so forth. But anyway, to answer your question, the book I'm writing now on Africans and African Americans, I spent a lot of time traveling there, and I went to Ghana. And the reason I went to Ghana was to go to the slave castles there. And the reason I went there was because I had read Maya Angelou's All God's Children Need Traveling Shoes. And she talks about this particular place, this particular village, where she goes and she realizes, it's a beautiful passage. I'm not going to do justice to it, just trying to, okay, maybe I will. So she talks about how she's in Ghana, Maldi versus Tam, Maldi, you have to imagine the energy, right? Anyway, she's about to leave the country. But she's just traveling. She ends up in this little village called Keta. When she gets to Keta, there's a bridge. And she tells the person who's showing around, like, I can't go over this bridge. And so the guy stops. Anyway, finally they walk across the bridge. Then this is how I'm describing it now. The women are yelling at her, right? And she's like, why are they yelling at me? But then the guide explains to her that it's because they are saying they know you, right? But for her, logically, she's like, of course they can't know me, right? But anyway, the gist of it is that this is a place where slaves were being taken from, right? Because we always think about, slaves in the African Americans abroad, right? But this was a village where they had been devastated across multiple generations because of slave trading, right? Yeah. So anyway, she realized the women are not really yelling at her, and they have, I don't know, let's just say a reunion of sorts. Anyway, so that led me to that journey of Ghana and slavery and so on and so forth. Anyway, so I actually did go to Keta. Yeah, so in Keta, it's this. So my agent was writing about it in the 1960s, right? And I was there 3 years ago. And it is, as she described it, this melancholic, still depressed, because it's inherited trauma, right? So you have to see generation after generation after generation inheriting this trauma. It was as she described it. I went there and, it was just depressing, right? There was a slave castle there, I went to it. Itself, the slave castle is also crumbling down, and so on and so forth. That's a different story. But after Keta, I went to Bristol. Right? Yeah, Bristol. Yeah. And Bristol was a slave-owning town, right? So when the slaves were being, it was a slave-owning port, right? So Bristol. Okay, so you have Keta as this depressed space. Still melancholic and inherited poverty and so on and so on, trauma. You go to Bristol, is this hip, bustling, college, craft beer kind of place, right? And that's when I started thinking about the differences between. And in Bristol they were talking about there was this guy called Colston. You can find it. He was a big slave owner or slave trader, and who had like flash cash. So the whole Bristol, a lot of it is named after him. And, yeah.
I remember him from last year with the statue.
Exactly. So that's when the statues of that discussion was happening and so on and so forth. But that's when I started thinking about the differences between symbolic decolonization and practical material. Yeah, because the question becomes, what duty then does Bristol? In Bristol they're talking about decolonization, and putting out, taking down the statues, right? But what practical responsibility does a place like Bristol, where the money there is actually from slavery, right? What does it have to bring? What does it have to say to Keta? Yep.
Can the university do research on the history of Bristol in connection to the triangular slave trade as a way of doing practical decolonization?
Okay, so it's tricky, right? You have George Washington University, right? Where it turns out that at George Washington University, okay, so the first thing is the close relationship between slavery and Christianity, right? Well, the one thing I found going to all these slave places or forts was you'd have a slave, and you'd have a dungeon where the slaves were being kept. Then on top of it, you have a church, like literally, on top of the dungeon, you have a church. Then on top of that, you have the governor's mansion, right? Anyway, with George Washington University, it was owned by Jesuit priests, right? So at some point, the university was going broke. So they're like, what do we do? They were like, we need to sell slaves. So that's George Washington. Yeah, so they sold the slaves. I don't know how many, maybe it's like 70 or so. But now that, but now the high school has the students there and the professors and so on are conscious of it. So they decided then, they need to look into this, and the students decided to raise their fees, their tuition. I don't know if this passed. You have to look into it. They decided to raise their fees by like $12, with the idea that money will go to their descendants who are somewhere in North Carolina, right? They also decided that if you come from these slaves that were sold, so the university will stay afloat, you can go to school for free, right? But really though, this is the question though. But really though, okay, Cornell University, where I go to school, where I teach, literally is built on land that was stolen from Native Americans, right? So, but the question is, the university is part of the problem, right? Because even when we recognize, and we're supposed to be the radicals, right? But even when we recognize, we do more like outreach. So Cornell, you can join I don't know. Like an outreach, Cornell outreach, into the community. But also we don't pay enough taxes. We don't pay our fair share of taxes, So to answer your question, the university is a problem. Yeah, it's a corporation that will have little islands, where we can change the department's name, and so on and so forth. But it's a corporation. Yeah. Yep. Now, not to say that we can't do good work, right? Because at least in the U.S., when you look at the U.S., what's happening? For example, the attacks on our critical race theory, right? Okay, so when you look at the opposition to, and this is more tactics, by the way. Sometimes I look at the U.S., I'm like, yep. We are back in the 90s. Because you dismantle the university, you kill the university, you fire the professors and you are radical and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we do the research, and and we expose, So good work, but we think, very exhausting and corporate and so I can't see him.
My question is, I'm loving what you're doing with like the new books. You really made your name at the very beginning with your crime fiction. Yeah. Have you abandoned that, or are you expecting anything from that?
So I do need to write a third one. My whole idea when I wrote Nairobi Heat. So actually I wrote this one first. It's just Nairobi Heat got published first, right? My whole idea would be to write 3 of them. So Nairobi Heat, Black Star Nairobi, and then I need to write 1 more, and then I'm just done, right? But also the reason why I wrote Nairobi Heat was thinking of people like Wendy Njoroge, and really, and growing up Okay, so in the 1980s, again, more in 1980s, 1990s, when, you know, when things were getting very, very repressed, right?
Yeah.
So that pretty much we read. That's all we read. Like Mukoma Wa Ngugi, David Mailu, popular fiction. When my dad's books were being banned, you could still get Mukoma Wa Ngugi and David Mailu.
Yeah.
You know, and part of it was the realization that these guys, though, that right? That these guys, even though you think of them as popular writers or popular fiction writers, they really were carrying the politics of the day, right? Yeah. So and I just wanted also to just pay homage to the real literature that I grew up reading, right? Yeah, and also to say that you know, okay, there are several things we have done badly. And one is to inherit and take it to heart the British idea of aesthetics, right? Yeah. So yeah, the whole debate between popular fiction and literary fiction, right? Yeah. So and I just wanted to say the fact that, I mean, if I can use the word, I'm terrible. Yeah. No. And just say no. And I can be a professor, right? Who's doing all this other stuff, but I can use all my skill and all my thinking and imagination to write Nairobi Heat or Blackstone Nairobi. Yeah.
I have a question.